a Chicago Bears Mahomes jersey working its way into the stands. Fair or foul there from the fan?
I think it's fair. I mean, especially because you traded up to get the guy. That's the other thing. We always talk about Pat Mahomes going number 2. It wasn't like they just stood pat and he fell to, or not Pat Mahomes, but rather Mitchell Trubisky. Like, they traded up to go get him. And so you gave up additional draft capital to go get him. You know, it's interesting about the Chiefs this year. They're sitting there at 11-4, and like, they have a chance like to still get a bye. Now, those things probably aren't going to happen. But I feel like they're a little bit like Clemson this year in the fact that like they were really good last season, possibly a offsides away, D Ford lining up in the neutral zone for playing for a Super Bowl. And then this year, you know, they struggled a little bit at the beginning. Pat Mahomes got tweaked up a little bit, and they struggled. And nobody talked about them. And all of a sudden, you're like, wait, they're 11-4? Like, yeah, they've got their division like locked up. Like, this team is really good. And you watch them play, like they could be a problem. And Pat Mahomes showed why last night.
Yeah, and I think that's what we have started to kind of formulate them now, because you're right. They would have to beat the Chargers next week, and they would need New England to lose to the Dolphins in Week 17. Yeah.
This Chiefs defense has quietly been one of the better defenses over the last month. And if you look historically, like I've been as hard on this defense as anybody, Steve Spagnuolo, it's a very complicated system. But if you remember the run that the Giants went on when they were able to win the Super Bowl, their defense was not good. And then all of a sudden, around week 8, 9, 10, it began to shift a little bit. And then by the end of the year, they're playing really good defensive football. And I think that we may be getting to see that right now with the Chiefs. And now you have Terrell Suggs to go opposite Frank Clark. You have a pretty good pass rushing duo now in critical situations. And a guy, and you can never underestimate this, in Terrell Suggs, who has a Super Bowl pedigree, who has won it before. Much like Mark Ingram going to the Ravens, like, I think there's a lot of value in that. A guy who has been there, who's been on teams, who's won it, who understands how to do it, who can communicate to younger players, like, this is how you have to get it done. Terrell Suggs can now provide those things for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, that sort of calming voice in certain situations, or the one that kind of reminds you, and Bobby, you could speak more to this, like, when a player like that is around and you've got a team that might be young, especially in the spots that we've seen, you can mention them and the Ravens, of quarterbacks that haven't necessarily been to that stage yet. Mahomes has made a deep playoff run already, going to an AFC title game, but the difference of kind of knowing what you need to do and not necessarily where to cut corners, but how to be efficient in pursuit of your ultimate goal.
Well, and also just the confidence of knowing that should everything hold serve, like, they're going to have to go to New England in the divisional round if they end up being the 3 seed, assuming that, you know, everybody wins in the way that it breaks out like it should. But Terrell Suggs is a guy who's had success. That Ravens team, you have to argue, has been as successful as anybody against the Patriots in the playoffs. And so he's a guy also that can provide, like, just that psychological lift. Because when you lose a game the way that they did, and you're like, oh, we've got it wrapped up, we've got it won, all flag on the field, and everybody gets upset about it. Like, it was a penalty. D Ford lined up in the neutral zone. Like, it wasn't like it was a subjective call. He was clearly in the neutral zone. And so that obviously negates the interception. The Patriots go on and win the game. But Terrell Suggs is a guy who's beaten the Patriots, who's had that type of success. And so, you know what? Like, just him going out there, having that belief, just if it's one guy, just light the spark, if you will. Just one guy to light the spark. And maybe Terrell Suggs can be that guy. He can be, if we're going to stick with the Star Wars theme, the rise of the resistance there in Kansas City.
I'm all in on Bobby Carpenter continuing the strand of Star Wars references through the show. And it's so interesting that we've done a Chiefs segment. We've spent the vast majority of the time talking about this defense that has now allowed 10 or fewer points in 3 of the last 4 games. It's given up 3 points in back-to-back games. And I understand the things that we can say about Chicago and their offense, which, for what it's worth,
they've been playing better too.
I was saying, I thought last night, despite the score and the inability in key situations, I thought overall the offense looked more confident. They started doing some of the things overall in this stretch that Mitch Trubisky does better. You mentioned the college football comparison. I would go to Notre Dame and Ian Book, who, once they started realizing, hey, if the first read or two isn't there and you tuck and run, it's not a bad thing. You do this pretty well. And with Mitchell Trubisky, they've gotten back to that. And I thought it has served them well. Not well enough to win in this spot, but as things go forward, and you know they're going to end up keeping Mitchell on now going into next year, the things that you build off
Is that good or bad?
To be determined right now.
Jameis Winston, Mitchell Trubisky, who would you rather have in 2020?
I mean, I just can't quit Jameis, man. Now, maybe on my team, because, man, 6 pick sixes in the body of a certain year is tough to overcome, but all the rest of it, it is football catnip. How are we supposed to turn that down, Bob? Who are you taking in that?
Gosh, how exciting of a game do you want to have? Do you want to see your quarterback on 3rd and 8 pull it down and run and maybe only get 6 yards? Or do you want to see your guy open up, just let it rip and throw a pick 6 on the first play of the game and be like, all right, glad we got that out of the way. Now we can start playing some real football. I'm a more conservative guy. I would probably lean on Mitchell Trubisky, thinking at least I know a little more of what he is. We can keep him inside the box, and he'll be a safe space for us to where we can keep the game close. Like, Jameis can either get us a 17-point lead, put us in a 17-point hole, and then find a way to tighten that margin down on both sides at some point during the game. And I don't know if I can psychologically, I can emotionally take that for 16 games. Like, Bruce Arians, like, God bless you, sir. Like, that would have to have probably a flask in my pocket to help take the edge off.
We're so glad you're watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app. And for live streaming sports and premium content, make sure you subscribe to ESPN Plus. We'll see you there.